Well, hello there. Welcome to the Home Bible Fellowship video for the week starting the 6th of March. This week we've been going through the book of First Peter and got to the end of chapter 1. On Sunday morning I did an overview of the first chapter, and today we want to look back at that and then take a little look forward into the start of chapter 2 that we'll get to this coming Sunday and in the weeks following. As you meet together as a Home Bible Fellowship group, whether it's now or whether it's later in your programme, I'd encourage you to make sure that you take time to pray together, to pray for each other in the group and take time to share prayer requests and things that you can pray and share one another's burdens in. But also pray for our church family. There's lots going on at the moment, lots of things we can be praying about. And obviously also praying for our world situation as we continue to see on the news some of the terrible things happening in Europe, in Ukraine, and in other places too. Yesterday, the sermon was entitled Far from Home, but with Hope and Purpose. And as we looked over 1 Peter chapter 1, we picked out some of these things. So as we get started tonight, I'd encourage you to pause the video now and read together 1 Peter chapter 1. As you've read that first chapter of 1 Peter, we've looked at it now for several weeks, and I wonder, has there been something that stood out to you as we've gone through the chapter? Maybe there's something that's niggled away at your mind for a few weeks. Maybe there's something that's been said in a sermon or something that you've read that's just stood out. Take a little bit of time now just to share in your group any of those things that have stood out in 1 Peter chapter 1. One of the clear things in this chapter is that we as Christians are exiles. We're not in our homeland. Our home is with our Father God in heaven. And while we're here on earth, we're not there. But I wonder, are there things that particularly highlight to you the fact that you are an exile as a child of God? Are there things that you see in those around about you? Are there things that happen in your life day to day that show that you are an exile? We also see hope. Hope in this passage. Yesterday I mentioned that in life we hope for many things. And some of those are a real hope, a hope that we can see can be realised. Others are more wishful thinking, things that we quite like, but it's unlikely to happen. In that first chapter of 1 Peter, what do we see that shows us that we as followers of Jesus, as children of God, have real hope? Hope that can be we can be confident in, hope that we know will be realised, rather than just something that's wishful thinking. What is our hope based on that we see in that first chapter? We also see purpose, that we're not just called to live for now, to live looking ahead to the future and nothing else, but we're called to live now with purpose. Our lives have purpose. We don't just wait for heaven and do nothing else. So a few questions to think about. How should our way of life be changed by the fact that we're part of God's family? Maybe you can share some ways in which you've changed since you became a Christian, the things that you now prioritise, or the things that you don't do that you used to do, and maybe that will encourage others in your group. And finally, as we think about now, can you pinpoint things that God is calling you to change in your life? What is it that God's specifically calling you to change? And maybe that's an item to share for prayer with the rest of your group. As we've looked at the first chapter of 1 Peter, we now move on to chapter 2, and Matthew will be preaching this coming Sunday, starting in chapter 2 of 1 Peter. So take some time this now to look at 1 Peter chapter 2, remembering the context in which it's set, remembering what we've looked at up to now in chapter 1, and read together 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 1 to 3. The theme that we've put down for this next chapter is it's time to grow up. So a few questions for you to discuss in your group based on these first 3 verses of chapter 2. First of all, maybe you can share with others how you have tasted that the Lord is good. It says, if indeed you have tasted that the Lord is good. I'm sure we have tasted that, but in what specific ways? Encourage each other with that this now. Now, together as a church, we've not explored these 3 verses, but as you've read them together there, what do you think is the key point of these 3 verses? What's the main thing that Peter's trying to communicate as he writes these 3 verses? Maybe some things to look at is, what is this spiritual milk that's mentioned? And how does it help us grow into salvation? In verse 1 as well, there's a clear list of things we should put aside. Is it easy to put those things aside, or do we find it quite difficult? Again, you can discuss and encourage one another as you look at these things. I hope you've been encouraged by the first chapter of 1 Peter, and I'm sure there'll be plenty to chew on as we go into chapter 2. But do pray together, do encourage one another as you go through these verses. I'll also put a couple of questions on the church app that you can use alongside this video as well. But thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.